You just got the news. Your teaching contract won't be renewed. And now you're wondering, should I resign instead? It feels like that's what you're supposed to do, right? Like resigning somehow looks better or makes it easier to get another job. I had the exact same thought when I got my non renewal. But after some thought, I've decided not to resign. And I kind of wanted to walk you through why. Because I don't think that this is a decision that you should make automatically. First, I really want to acknowledge that every teacher situation is different. In my case, I was non renewed because my position was eliminated as a result of budget cuts. In some states, that might not even be considered a non renewal, but in my state, it is. Also, every area of the country is a little bit different, and where you live depends on how easy or more challenging it is to get another job. So I think those are factors that you really have to weigh carefully when you're making a decision about whether to resign or to accept the non renewal. So, why have I decided to take the non renewal versus resign? There are four main reasons I made this decision. And the first one is the one that I think most people overlook, and it's unemployment. I think this is the biggest one. If I resign, I lose access to unemployment. And I know you might be thinking, but I already have another job lined up, so does it really matter? I mean, that's exactly where I am. But here's the reality. Until you or I actually start that job, nothing is guaranteed. Enrollments can drop, budgets can change, positions can disappear over the summer. And if something falls through and you've already resigned, the safety net of unemployment is often gone. And if you've watched any of my other videos, especially the money ones, I'm going to be honest, I really need the safety net. And once you resign, you typically don't get that back. And I think this is why this particular decision deserves more thought than many people give it. You have some districts actually try and pressure teachers to resign in order to avoid paying extra unemployment taxes the next year. Policies vary by state, but in most cases, a non renewal alone doesn't disqualify you from unemployment, even if it is performance related. So before you resign, you really need to ask yourself, am I okay with giving up that backup plan of unemployment? And honestly, that alone was almost enough to make my decision. But it's not the only thing I had to consider, and that I think that you should think about as well. The second reason is probably the one that I suspect you've heard of most, but I don't think people talk about this part of it enough, and that is job applications. For most people that I talk to, this is the biggest reason that people choose to resign. They don't want to have to check the "have you ever been non-renewed" box on a job application. But here's what I noticed when I started applying. A lot of applications now ask you if you've ever resigned to avoid non-renewal. So if you're answering honestly, you may not actually avoid anything. And sure, you could say no, but then you have to be okay with that risk. Because what your district says now isn't always what they'll say later. HR changes, policies change. So for me, resigning didn't really solve the problem that people think that it does. Reason number 3, union support. This next one depends a lot on your state and your district, but it matters for me. Since I'm being non-renewed due to budget cuts, I want to keep my union involved as long as possible. Even though the decision has been made, they can still make sure the district follows proper procedures, especially around things like reduction in force and recall rights. In my district, like a lot of districts, if a position opens back up, it has to be offered to someone who was non-renewed due to that reduction in force. And if your non-renewal is for other reasons, your union can help make sure that due process was followed and help you navigate your exit. You don't lose all of that if you resign, but in some places, a union can do less for you if you do resign. And if you're not part of a union, this is definitely one of those moments where you realize why people join. Finally, reason 4, financial penalties. This is one a lot of people, I think, don't really think about. In my district and a lot of others, there are financial penalties for resigning after a certain point in the school year. We're talking about anywhere from $1,000 to $3,000. And in some districts, it's even more. The district can waive it, and I think that mine actually would, but they don't have to. And for me, it just doesn't make sense to risk paying money for something that wasn't my decision in the first place. These sorts of financial penalties are often outlined in your contract, so it's definitely something that I would encourage you to check before you make that final decision. So, those are my reasons for accepting the non renewal and not resigning. If I were being non renewed for poor performance, my decision might be a little bit different, but I actually don't know. And here's the thing, being non renewed is not the end of your teaching career, and it's certainly not going to be the end of mine. I've met plenty of teachers who are non renewed, even due to performance, especially early on in their careers, and they went on to find jobs that they love. Sometimes a school just isn't the right fit, or you genuinely don't have great performance and you learn from that and move on. If you live in a state with a really strong union and no teacher shortage, perhaps resigning might make sense for you, but I don't think that it should be automatic. There are consequences to resigning that you can't undo. So I would encourage you to think about it really carefully. So those are my reasons. But I'm really curious what you're thinking. Are you leaning towards resigning or taking the non renewal? Let me know in the comments, because I think a lot of us right now are trying to figure this out. And your experience might help someone else. It might help me. And if this video helped you think through this decision, then make sure you like and subscribe. I'm going to be sharing a lot about the realities of my job hunt and teaching, not just the highlight reels that you sometimes see. So I'll see you in the next one.